Time to go. Time to move something too heavy for man alone. Time to jump into a forklift and go to work. But wait a minute. How's your judgment quotient? As a professional forklift operator, you'll make judgment calls all day. Operate on the safe side. Don't ignore safety rules. Don't take shortcuts. Once your forklift is pre-shift inspected, you're ready to deal with major issues, operating conditions, and special hazards. These vary with the work you're doing and can change many times each day. This program covers operating conditions first, such things as surface conditions, probable loads and stability, proper load manipulation, including stacking and unstacking, vehicle and pedestrian traffic, and special conditions like narrow aisles or restricted access. As the operator of a forklift truck, it's part of your job to examine the surfaces on which you drive to make sure they're safe and strong enough to support the weight of the truck and the load. Loose objects, bumps, or uneven floors can jerk your steering out of control, or even bring a moving forklift to a quick and unplanned stop. No matter the surface, speed is a big forklift issue. Safety professionals say that safe plant speed is no faster than a quick walking pace. Forklift stability is affected by speed, rough surfaces, and traveling with wheels on different kinds of surfaces. You can't always avoid these places, so slow down and reduce your load to increase stability. Cross railroad tracks and similar edges at a 45-degree angle rather than straight on. That way, only one wheel at a time negotiates the edge. Most forklift truck tires are designed to support weight and don't provide surface traction. Wet, oily, or icy patches can send a lift truck skidding and its load sliding, especially on turns. If you discover a spill, get it cleaned up and don't drive through it. If you drive in and out of cold rooms or freezers, remember that wet tires or floors reduce traction dangerously. Load size and weight affect truck stability. Never exceed your truck's rated load capacity. You'll find it on the plate inside the truck. Your truck's operator manual describes how load shape, size, carrying angle, and counterweight affect stability. Counterweight is the weight built into the truck that helps to minimize risk of tip over. Each situation and every lift is different, but one rule that applies to every truck and load. Anytime the center of the downward force of your load extends beyond your stability triangle, you risk tip over or loss of your load. Make sure your truck's capacity, surface conditions, your pickup, route, and set down are safe. Reduce your load if it is tall, wide, oddly shaped, or if you're using attachments. Carry a smaller load if a high lift is involved at either pickup or set down point, or if the route is rough. Reduce your load if it's not centered on the pallet, or if its center of gravity cannot be carried close to your drive wheels. Reduce your load if you will have to make tight turns or run on a ramp or incline. Your forks affect load stability. Space forks as far apart as possible to increase stability. Make sure the load is stable and won't shift while traveling. Check for loose or slippery items and secure the entire load. Wrap or strap loads composed of individual items. Never pick up loads on broken pallets or containers that are in bad condition. In most jobs, you'll pick and move the same kinds of loads over and over again. Once you learn how to do it right, practice makes it easier. Once you've examined the load and are sure it's safe to pick up, you're ready to lift. First, check the area to make sure no one is standing nearby. To pick up a load, Square up on its center and approach it straight on. Stop with the tips of your forks about 1 foot from the load. Level the forks and slowly drive forward until the load rests against the mast. Now lift the load high enough to clear whatever is under it and tilt the mast back slightly to a traveling position. Now your load center of gravity rides over your drive wheels. If there's another load in front of the one you're lifting, lift without tilting. Remember to lift only enough to clear the other load. Now look over both shoulders to make sure it's safe to move in reverse. If it's clear, back out about 1 foot. Stop, lower the load, and tilt the mast back to a traveling position. Remember that the traveling position is as close to the floor as possible, usually 1 inch or 2 at the heel of the forks, with the load resting against the mast. As you drive, stay within the floor markings and out of the pedestrian lanes. When you're ready to put the load down, square up and stop about 1 foot away. Drive forward until you're about halfway into the loading area. Stop. Level the forks and drive the rest of the way in. Lower the load. Once the load is seated, lower the fork slightly to keep from hooking the load on pullout. Never do this until the load is seated. Look behind you over both shoulders and back out slowly. Watch for rear swing as you turn. When you work with high stacks, approach and travel are the same. But remember, the higher you go, the less stable your forklift and your load become. To remove a load from a high stack, keep forks near the floor until you stop straight on and about 1 foot away from the stack. Raise the mast until the forks are at the right height. Move forward slowly until the load is flush with the back of the forks. Lift the load high enough to clear the item below. Look over both shoulders and slowly back straight out until you've cleared the edge of the stack. Stop and lower the load to the traveling position. Tilt the load back, stay within the lines, and you're ready to go. To stack one load on top of another, approach it slowly and squarely. Stop about 1 foot away and lift the mast high enough to clear the top of the stack. Inch forward until the load is square over the top of the stack. Level the forks and lower the mast until the load is no longer supported by the forks. Make sure forks are level so you don't hook anything. Look over both shoulders and back straight out. When working with stacks, it's important to make sure the top load sits squarely on the stack. Being just a little off can topple the whole stack. In most cases, when the mast is elevated, avoid tilting since this can tip the truck. Remember these key stacking rules. Make sure you have enough overhead clearance and watch for electrical lines, pipes, light fixtures, and sprinkler heads. Never raise or lower a load unless you are at full stop. Always approach the load straight on and remove it by backing straight out. Never attempt to turn with your mast raised. This greatly reduces your stability and almost guarantees a tip over. When traveling, always keep the load tilted slightly back and the forks as low as possible. 1 inch or 2 at the heels and 4 to 6 inches at the tips should be enough for the pallet to clear most uneven surfaces. Professional operators never drive with obstructed vision. Drive in reverse if you can't see over your load. Slow down and sound your horn before moving into intersections, blind corners, or any other locations where you can't see what's ahead. Remember, a forklift is less stable on turns, so slow down and be especially careful to swing wide and turn smoothly. Travel at a slow, steady speed. Follow posted limits or slow down enough to be sure you can stop safely without losing your load. When moving, keep at least 3 truck lengths between you and other vehicles, and never swerve around another vehicle. Never pass another truck traveling in the same direction at intersections, blind spots, or other dangerous locations. Yield to pedestrians. They always have the right of way, whether in walking lanes or not. Remember, pedestrians may forget you can't turn quickly, and always expect the unexpected. Never drive up to anyone standing in front of a fixed object like a bench, platform, or dock. If you can't stop in time, if you skid, or if the load shifts, you could kill them. Never allow anyone to stand or walk under the elevated forks, whether loaded or not. A hydraulic failure or broken fork could prove fatal. If your truck is used to lift personnel, attach the proper personnel platform securely to your forks and insist that the person being lifted tie off to the mast or to the overhead in the case of an order picker. Never travel with a person on your platform. One bump could result in massive injuries or death. And never allow anyone to stand on the forks, which are often slippery and too narrow to provide proper footing. On grades, drive slowly and travel with the load up grade. You will back down slopes when you're loaded. Plan for this ahead of time so you can get turned around before the slope begins. Never attempt to turn on a grade. Anytime you enter an elevator, make sure to approach it squarely. Put controls in neutral, set the brakes, and turn off the power. In some work areas, you'll negotiate narrow aisles or restricted access areas. These take special skill because maneuvering room is limited. Some lift trucks allow you to move forks to one side to make tight operating easy. In many tight situations, you'll use a small lift truck with a short turning radius. Some examples of these are high lift straddle trucks, front side loader or turret trucks, and order pickers. As with any kind of forklift operation, practice during hands-on training helps you master using lift trucks in special situations. Up to this point, we've looked at basic operating conditions found in almost every work situation. To be certified as a forklift operator, you also need to be able to spot and deal with special hazards you may encounter. Some common special hazards are hazardous locations, hazardous activities, hazardous environments. All forklift trucks are not created equal. You already know how this applies to load capacity and terrain. However, it also applies to the kinds of situations where a truck can operate. For example, only certain kinds of lift trucks can operate around food and food processing equipment. This is because food products must be kept free of emissions and other hazards that certain trucks create. Lift trucks are also classified according to other kinds of hazardous conditions. Only specially designed trucks can be used around certain chemicals, or where flammable dust or vapors are present. Because chemical vapors, grain, metal, and fiber dust can explode, only trucks with special non-sparking and low-heat safeguards can be used. Your employer evaluates your workplace and determines the proper trucks to use. Your job is to understand any restrictions and never to operate in an area where you could be exposed to hazardous chemicals or set off a fire or explosion. Hazardous activities also pose special risks to forklift operators. Among these are operation on ramps or slopes and operation on docks. Remember to always drive with your load on the high side of any slope or ramp. If you're going up the ramp, raise your forks slightly to avoid scraping them on the ground. Once all wheels are on the ramp, you can lower them to the normal traveling position. Be careful when cresting the top of the ramp. If your load is heavy, it could cause your steering wheels to raise off the ground. When you're traveling down a ramp or hill, drive in reverse to keep your load on the high side of the slope. Use a signal person to help you avoid collisions. At the bottom, you may have to raise the load slightly so that it doesn't scrape. The procedure is a little different when your lift truck is empty. Here, the best approach is to back up a slope and drive down it forward. Work on ramps or slopes requires pre-planning to get the tools and help you need. Always stay well back from the edge of ramps and docks. Remember that your vehicle and load make you naturally unstable. Edges and slopes only increase that instability. Make sure dock boards or bridge plates are properly secured and strong enough to handle the combined weight of your truck and its load. Keep the bridge or dock plate as level as possible and free of oil, dirt, water, ice, or snow. This helps you to drive smoothly in and out of the trailer or rail car and reduces your chance of skidding sideways and sliding off the edge. Trailer and rail car wheels must be chocked to prevent movement. Trailers should have their brakes set and be resting on steel jacks if they are not hooked up to a tractor. Use a dock lock to hold a container to the dock if one is available. Check to see that the trailer or rail car is secure and fasten your forklift seatbelt before you enter. If a container rolls forward as you drive on, you and your forklift fall between the dock and trailer. Your seatbelt provides some protection in this kind of accident, but it's better to make sure every trailer or rail car is secure before you drive on it. A few other points about working with containers. Don't forget to double check whether the trailer or rail car floor is strong enough to hold your forklift and its load. Make sure the roof is high enough for you to pass and that you have enough light to work. If the trailer or rail car is a flatbed, remember that this is a lot like driving on a dock or ramp. Safety sidebars help to keep you from driving over the edge. Hazardous environments is the last type of special hazard you might encounter. Because every workplace is unique, the dangers will vary. During your certification training, you will learn about possible environmental hazards in your facility. Some common forklift hazards are chemical exposure, leaks, and other emergencies in pits and edges. In some cases, you may need to wear special personal protective equipment, called PPE. Some common types are hearing protection, eye protection, and respiratory protection. Follow all the precautions that you learn in your training. They are as much a part of being a professional forklift operator as is moving loads without accidents. There's one final environmental hazard that a forklift operator may encounter, and it's one that's created by the forklift. Forklifts that operate on gasoline, propane, and diesel fuel create hazardous fumes and carbon monoxide. Battery-operated lifts generate hydrogen gas that's explosive. Make sure the ventilation system is working properly when working indoors, and don't turn it off because it's too cold inside or because it's too noisy. Be especially careful about closing garage or freight doors in cold weather. Operators and co-workers are overcome by carbon monoxide fumes every winter when toxic air gathers in closed warehouses. Because carbon monoxide is odorless, you can be overcome without suspecting that anything is wrong. Symptoms include feeling weak, sleepy, dizzy, or getting a headache. If you develop any of these symptoms, turn off your truck and get to fresh air immediately. Many people who develop these symptoms assume they are getting the flu and keep working. If your facility uses carbon monoxide detectors, heed their warning. It's always safest to leave doors and windows open and air handling units operating. In the last few minutes, we've covered operating conditions and special hazards, information you need to be a better forklift operator. There are also some basic safety rules to follow. Buckle your seatbelt as soon as you sit down on the truck. It protects you from falling out and possibly being crushed if the forklift rolls or tips or if someone hits you. Buckle up and stay with your truck. If you're operating a stand-up truck, it's safest to step off in case of a tip over. If you leave your forklift for any reason, lower the lifting mechanism. Put the controls in neutral and set the brakes. If you're going to be 25 feet or more from the truck, or if it's out of your direct view, turn off the truck. Never modify the forks or attachments or add counterweights to the truck. This takes written authorization from the manufacturer because any changes to the truck affect its stability and structural integrity. Keep your arms and legs inside the truck and away from the uprights of the mast to prevent injury or possible amputation. Keep the controls in your hands clean and free of oil and grease. Since you often use one hand to steer and one hand for the controls, you can't afford to have slippery hands or controls. Never block doors, fire exits, stairways, or access to safety equipment like fire extinguishers or emergency showers. Remember that your forks are not designed to open doors